Hello, welcome back to our channel, where we explore the deepest and most terrifying mysteries of the world. Today, we have content that will chill even the bravest of souls. We'll dive into real and supernatural stories that have occurred and continue to happen in the Osawka tunnels every day. These are accounts of sinister shadows, malevolent presences, and paranormal encounters that defy all logical explanations. Get ready to hear stories that will stir your mind and your heart. From visions of spectral figures to frightening premonitions, disappearances, and shivers, these episodes will leave you questioning everything you think you know about life and death. Warning: these stories are real, and may disturb sensitive minds, submitted by viewers. If you have a story you'd like to share, drop it here below in the comments. The mysterious tunnels of Osawka in the southwest of Poland, near the border with the Czech Republic, stretches a vast and sinister labyrinth of tunnels and underground chambers beneath the Soe Mountains. This enigmatic complex, known as Osawka, was one of the most ambitious and secretive parts of the gigantic Project Reese, envisioned by the Nazis during World War II. Supervised by Albert Speer, a close confidant of Hitler and Minister of Armament and War Production, the intent was to create an underground city capable of housing up to 20,000 people, including bomb factories, scientific facilities, and shelters for the Nazi elite. In mid-1943, construction began with brutal efficiency, using thousands of prisoners of war and forced laborers, who worked in inhumane conditions. The tunnels were excavated to a significant depth, designed to withstand bombings and operate as a safe and self-sufficient refuge. However, with the advance of the Allied forces and the worsening of the Nazi military situation, the works were abruptly abandoned at the end of the war in 1945. After the war, explorers and researchers discovered the Osawka tunnels, finding a scene of desolation and mystery. Scattered throughout the dark chambers were gas masks, weapons, pickaxes, and human bones, sad reminders of the workers who perished there. But it wasn't just the physical remnants that caused shivers. Stories of hauntings, unexplained phenomena, and terrifying visions began to circulate among those venturing into the depths of the complex. It is said that the tunnels are inhabited by the restless spirits of those who died there, guarding secrets that still defy understanding. The feeling of being watched, whispers in the darkness, and shadows that move on their own have turned Osawka into a place shrouded in terror and fascination. Here are 5 of the most chilling stories about the Osawka tunnels, revealing a dark and supernatural side to this historical complex, leaving behind a mystery that persists to this day. The Sleeping Guardians. The Osawka tunnels are shrouded in mystery and terror, a place where history and the supernatural intertwine. One of the most disturbing stories is that of the Sleeping Guardians, spectral soldiers who supposedly watch over the tunnels, maintaining an eternal vigil. In the summer of 2008, a Polish historian named Marek Zielinski decided to conduct an in-depth investigation in the Osawka tunnels. Marek was determined to document the truth behind the legends and myths associated with the complex. He spent weeks preparing his expedition, collecting equipment, old maps, and recruiting a small team of assistants. Finally, on a cloudy morning in August, Marek and his team, consisting of Anya, a photographer, Paweł, a local guide, and Krzysztof, a sound technician, entered the tunnels. As they progressed, the atmosphere became increasingly oppressive, with the air heavy and cold, even in the heat of summer. The stone walls, covered in moss and dampness, seemed to absorb all light, plunging them into constant twilight. Upon reaching a deep chamber, Marek noticed something peculiar on the walls: Nazi insignias and occult symbols carved into the stone. Paweł, the guide, explained that this was one of the oldest and least explored areas of the complex, supposedly used for secret rituals and ceremonies. Anya took photos while Krzysztof recorded ambient sounds, capturing strange whispers that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. While Marek examined the symbols, he noticed a narrow passage hidden behind a rock. With effort, they managed to move the rock, revealing a dark tunnel that seemed to descend even deeper. Determined to find out more, the team entered the tunnel, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they advanced, the temperature dropped dramatically. They began to hear footsteps echoing around, although they were alone. Powell, the guide, started to recount local stories about Nazi soldiers who never left the tunnels, forced to guard unspeakable secrets. According to the legend, these sleeping guardians were the spirits of the soldiers, trapped in a state of eternal vigil, awaiting orders that would never come. Suddenly, Anya screamed, her flashlight illuminating a figure in a Nazi uniform standing ahead. The figure was motionless, with empty glowing eyes, as if in a trance. Before they could react, the figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving only a chilling sensation in the air. Panic began to overtake the group. Powell, visibly shaken, insisted on turning back, but Merrick was determined to continue. They pressed forward, encountering more spectral figures along the way, all silent, watching them with vacant stares. Christoph captured strange murmurs on his sound equipment, words in German that seemed like military orders. They arrived at a large chamber, where a terrifying scene unfolded. Several ghostly soldiers were gathered around a stone table, as if in an eternal meeting. In the center of the table was a detailed map of the tunnels, covered in occult symbols and strange markings. Merrick tried to take a photo, but his camera failed, as did Anya's. Christoph's sound equipment began to emit static, and the murmurs turned into agonizing screams. The team tried to flee, but the tunnels seemed to stretch endlessly, shifting and closing around them. The spectral figures followed them, their presence becoming increasingly oppressive. In a fit of panic, Powell ran into the darkness and disappeared, his screams echoing through the corridors. Merrick, Anya, and Christoph finally found an exit, exhausted and terrified. When they emerged from the tunnels, they realized it had become night, although they had entered in the morning. The relief was quickly replaced by horror as they realized Powell never returned. They reported the incident to the authorities, but searches in the tunnels found no sign of Powell or the spectral figures. Christoph's recordings revealed only static and unintelligible screams. Anya's photos were all blurred, as if an invisible force had interfered. Traumatized, Merrick wrote a detailed report about the incident, but many considered it fictitious, a desperate attempt to explain the unexplainable. To this day, the Osawka tunnels remain a place of mystery and terror. The few who dare to explore its depths report the same sensation of being watched, of whispering voices and shadows that move on their own. The fate of Powell and the truth about the sleeping guardians continue to be enigmas, reminding everyone that some secrets should remain buried forever, in the dark depths of the Osawka tunnels. The ghosts of the workers. The Osawka tunnels are known for their dark history and the inexplicable phenomena that occur within their depths. One of the most terrifying stories tells of the ghosts of the forced laborers who were brought by the thousands to construct the underground complex under inhumane conditions. These workers, many of whom were prisoners of war and captured civilians, endured grueling workdays, scant food, and constant disease. Many died from exhaustion, starvation, or illness, and their bodies were buried within the very walls of the tunnels they built. On that fateful night, a night guard named Janek was patrolling the tunnels. He always felt a chill passing through those damp and cold corridors, but that night felt different. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As he reached one of the deepest and least explored tunnels, he heard a sound that froze his blood. They were screams, desperate and full of agony, echoing from the depths. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Janek followed the sound until he reached a locked door that hadn't been opened for decades. His fingers trembled as he struggled to turn the rusty key. When the door finally swung open, he was engulfed by dense darkness and the putrid smell of decay. With his flashlight flickering, Janek stepped into the tunnel. The corridor seemed to stretch into infinity, each step increasing his sense of terror. Suddenly, he felt a cold breeze pass through him, carrying indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from all directions. The cold, damp walls appeared to close in around him. At one moment, his flashlight illuminated something that looked like a hunched human figure. He stepped forward and saw it clearly. It was a ghostly worker, with a pale face and empty eyes, staring fixedly at him. Yannick tried to back away, but his feet seemed glued to the floor. Other workers began to emerge from the shadows, all with expressions of pain and suffering, their clothes torn and stained with blood. They slowly approached, their moans of despair growing in intensity. Yannick felt a cold, bony hand touch his shoulder, and a voice whispered in his ear, "Help us." The guard, in panic, let out a scream and ran back through the tunnel, stumbling and falling multiple times. When he finally made it out of the tunnel, the door slammed shut violently behind him. Panting and sweating coldly, he looked back and saw the faces of the ghosts pressed against the small window in the door, watching him with a mix of sadness and anger. Yannick never returned to the tunnels. He quit his job and moved far away, but the events of that night haunted him for the rest of his life. Those who heard his story avoid the Osawka tunnels, fearing to encounter the tormented spirits of the workers who still roam the depths, forever trapped in their eternal suffering. Since that incident, many others have reported similar experiences. Sounds of footsteps, whispers, and even screams are often heard by those who venture into the tunnels. The shadowy figures of the workers can be seen lurking in the shadows, and the feeling of being watched is constant. The Osawka tunnels remain a place of mystery and terror, where the echoes of a dark past still resonate, warning everyone that the evil of that place has never completely disappeared. The Witch's Curse. On the outskirts of the Soe Mountains, there was a small village known for its tales of magic and mystery. In the heart of this village lived a woman named Elzbieta, known to all as the Mountain Witch. She was versed in ancient mystical arts and was sought after by locals for cures and protection. However, during the Nazi occupation, her presence and powers became a threat to the Germans' plans. Albert Speer, the architect of Project Reese, heard rumors about Elzbieta and her supernatural abilities. Fearing she could interfere with the construction, he ordered her to be captured and brought to the tunnels. On a dark night, Nazi soldiers stormed her cottage, dragging her forcibly to the underground complex. Bound and gagged, Elzbieta was taken to a deep, dark chamber where she would be interrogated and, if necessary, eliminated. The soldiers tortured her, trying to extract secrets and force her to reveal any knowledge that could threaten the project. She resisted, her eyes glowing with intense fury, refusing to yield. For days, they kept her prisoner, subjecting her to unspeakable atrocities. But with each blow and each scream, Elzbieta's resolve only grew stronger. Finally, realizing they could not break her spirit, the Nazis decided to end her life. On the night of her sacrifice, they took her to one of the deepest chambers of the tunnels, where its walls were stained with the blood of those who had suffered before her. The soldiers tied her to an ancient stone altar, erected in the center of the chamber, and prepared to execute her. Before the blade could fall, Elzbieta uttered a curse with her last breath. "May those who spill innocent blood in these tunnels be forever tormented by the souls of the wronged. May fear and darkness fill their hearts, and may they never find peace." As soon as the curse was cast, a chilling wind swept through the tunnels, and the torches flickered with a sinister light. The soldiers hesitated for a moment but soon fulfilled their duty, ending the witch's life. However, her spirit did not find rest. The chamber where she died became a hotbed of intense paranormal activity. Accounts from soldiers patrolling the tunnels during the war described a female presence, dressed in rags, silently walking through the shadows. They heard whispered laughter and felt cold touches on their skin. Some even claimed to have seen Elzbieta in their dreams, her eyes burning with eternal hatred, promising vengeance. Years after the war ended, researchers exploring the tunnels found traces of the tortures inflicted on Elzbieta. nail scratches on the walls, strange symbols carved into the stones, and an oppressive feeling of evil permeated the air. A group of paranormal investigators who entered the witch's chamber reported that their flashlights suddenly went out, and a whispering voice urged them to leave. The sensation of invisible hands grabbing their ankles made them flee in terror. To this day, those who venture into the Osawka tunnels report encounters with the witch. She appears as a shadowy figure in the darkest corners, her eyes glowing with a supernatural light. The whispers of her curse still echo off the walls, and the fear she instills is palpable. No one knows for sure what happened to Elzbieta's soul, but many believe she still guards the tunnels, seeking revenge against those who dare disturb her eternal rest. The mystery remains: is the witch's curse real? Or are they just stories told to scare the curious? One thing is certain: the Osawka tunnels hold dark secrets, and those who venture into their depths must be prepared to face the terror that resides there. The disappearance of the researchers. On a cloudy morning in 1998, 3 researchers, Dr. Tomasz, Katarzyna, and Piotr, set out to explore the Osawka tunnels. They were members of a team of archaeologists and historians, determined to uncover the secrets hidden in the depths of the underground complex. Equipped with flashlights, cameras, and detailed maps, they entered the main entrance of the tunnels, unaware that they would never be seen again. The 3 moved cautiously through the dark corridors, mapping every turn and crevice. For hours, they advanced without issue, documenting interesting finds such as ancient tools, remnants of military equipment, and some inscriptions on the walls. As they delved deeper, the air grew colder and heavier, and a growing sense of discomfort hung over them. When they reached an unfamiliar fork, they decided to briefly separate to cover more ground. Dr. Tomasz took the right tunnel, while Katarzyna and Piotr took the left, agreeing to meet again in half an hour. However, as they moved apart, their sense of unease increased. Dr. Tomasz, an experienced man skeptical of the supernatural, began to hear footsteps behind him. Initially, he thought it was an echo or perhaps a small animal. But the footsteps continued, getting closer and synchronized with his own. When he turned to check, he saw only dense darkness. Determined not to be intimidated, he continued forward, but the feeling of being watched did not leave him. Meanwhile, Katarzyna and Piotr explored a particularly narrow and winding tunnel. Katarzyna noticed strange marks on the walls, like ancient symbols, partially worn away by time. She took photos and called Piotr to examine them more closely. Just as he approached, they both heard a faint whisper, as if someone was trying to speak to them. Piotr, with his flashlight trembling, illuminated the wall, and for a brief second, they saw a translucent figure disappear into the darkness. Frightened, they decided to return and find Dr. Tomasz. But when they returned to the meeting point, he was not there. Unease turned to panic as they shouted his name, receiving only the echo back. They decided then to follow the right tunnel to look for him, but it seemed that the more they advanced, the more labyrinthine and confusing the tunnels became. Suddenly, their flashlights began to fail, flickering erratically. Katarzyna felt a cold hand touch her shoulder and let out a scream. When Piotr turned to help her, he saw a dark shadow move quickly along the wall. Fear took over them, and they began to run blindly through the tunnels, trying to find the exit. The corridors seemed to change and extend infinitely, as if they were alive. The sound of footsteps, whispers, and distant laughter followed them. After what seemed like hours, Piotr tripped and fell, hitting his head on a rock. Katarzyna tried to help him, but felt an invisible force pulling her back. Desperate, she screamed for help, but her words were lost in the darkness. The next day, a rescue team was sent to find the 3 researchers. They discovered the equipment left behind, scattered on the floor of the tunnels, but no sign of the researchers themselves. Only a single notebook of Katarzyna's was found, its pages scrawled with words of despair and fear. The last entry read, "They are coming. We cannot escape." The bodies of Dr. Tomasz, Katarzyna, and Piotr were never found, and their fate remains a mystery. Some people believe they fell victim to the ghosts of the workers who still haunt the tunnels. Others think the tunnels themselves are a living entity, devouring those who dare to explore their depths. Since then, the Osawka tunnels have become known not just for their historical value but also as a place of terror and despair. Those who venture into its dark shadows are always warned to stay together, for those who get lost in the tunnels may never find their way back. The Cursed Artifact. In an expedition conducted in 2003, a team of archaeologists and historians decided to explore the Osawka tunnels, hoping to uncover more about the secrets buried beneath the Soe Mountains. The team consisted of 5 main members: Dr. Andrei, a respected archaeologist; Marta, a historian; Adam, an artifact specialist; Kasia, an archaeology student; and Piotr, a cameraman tasked with documenting the expedition. For days, the group explored the tunnels, finding remnants of tools, military equipment, and some personal items left behind by forced laborers. However, on a gloomy afternoon, while Marta and Kasia were examining a forgotten chamber, they made a startling discovery. Partially buried under a layer of debris and stones, they found an iron chest, sealed and adorned with Nazi symbols. With effort, they opened the chest and inside found a strange and disturbing artifact: an ancient black iron cross embedded with esoteric runes and the swastika symbol. It was evident that the artifact had an occult significance, possibly related to Nazi occult practices. Adam, fascinated by the find, decided to take the artifact for further study, ignoring Marta's warnings about a possible curse associated with it. That night, while the team camped near the tunnel entrance, strange events began to occur. The air around seemed to grow heavier, and a sense of unease took hold of everyone. Piotr, who was reviewing the day's footage, noticed something disturbing. In several scenes, dark shadows appeared in the background, moving in an unnatural manner. At midnight, Dr. Andrei was awakened by a strange noise coming from the chamber where the artifact was stored. He went to check and found Adam standing, staring fixedly at the iron cross. When he tried to call him, Adam turned with a vacant look and said in a monotone voice, "They are here." Suddenly, the camp lights flickered and went out. Screams echoed through the tunnels, and a sense of panic overcame the team. Marta felt a chilling presence pass by her and heard whispers in an unknown language. The team tried to flee, but the tunnel seemed to change shape, becoming an endless labyrinth. Adam, still holding the iron cross, began to murmur incoherent words and walked into the darkness of the tunnels. Dr. Andrei, Marta, Kasia, and Piotr tried to follow him but soon realized they were surrounded by shadows that seemed to have a life of their own. Ghostly voices whispered in their ears, and invisible hands pulled at their hair and clothes. Desperate, the 4 ran towards an exit but were separated. Kasia found a room filled with bones and ancient relics. Suddenly, the walls began to close around her, and she screamed as she was crushed by the invisible force. Piotr, trying to record everything with his camera, was dragged into the darkness by an unknown force, his screams lost in the echo of the tunnels. Dr. Andrei and Marta, the only survivors, managed to find their way back to the tunnel entrance. Exhausted and terrified, they decided the only way to stop the curse was to return the artifact to its original place. Cautiously, they went back to the chamber and placed the iron cross back in the chest. As soon as the lid closed, the atmosphere seemed to calm, and the oppressive feeling diminished. However, when they emerged from the tunnels, they realized that Adam was still missing. Authorities were called, but no search could find him. What remained of the expedition was Marta's notebook, describing the terrifying events and the warning to never again disturb the tunnels. In the years that followed, many who ventured into the Osawka tunnels reported seeing a spectral figure holding an iron cross, wandering the dark chambers. It is believed that Adam's spirit became trapped in the labyrinth, doomed to wander eternally for disturbing the cursed artifact. To this day, the Osawka tunnels are avoided by many, and the few brave souls who enter always report a sensation of being watched and followed. The mystery of the Nazi artifact and the fate of the researchers continue to haunt the imagination of those who hear this story, reminding everyone that some secrets should remain buried forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like to support us. And more importantly, if you have a supernatural experience, don't keep it to yourself. Write your story in the comments below. Share your encounter with the inexplicable, feed the collective curiosity, and who knows, maybe together we can unravel these mysteries that hang like a fog between the world of the living and the dead. Remember, the unknown is always lurking, just a tale away. And now, with night falling, who knows what shadows may emerge from the darkness to whisper yet another true story of terror. Dr. Andre and Marta, the only survivors, managed to find their way back to the tunnel entrance. Exhausted and terrified, they decided the only way to stop the curse was to return the artifact to its original place. Cautiously, they went back to the chamber and placed the iron cross back in the chest. As soon as the lid closed, the atmosphere seemed to calm, and the oppressive feeling diminished. However, when they emerged from the tunnels, they realized that Adam was still missing. Authorities were called, but no search could find him. What remained of the expedition was Marta's notebook, describing the terrifying events and the warning to never again disturb the tunnels. In the years that followed, many who ventured into the Osawka tunnels reported seeing a spectral figure holding an iron cross, wandering the dark chambers. It is believed that Adam's spirit became trapped in the labyrinth, doomed to wander eternally for disturbing the cursed artifact. To this day, the Osawka tunnels are avoided by many, and the few brave souls who enter always report a sensation of being watched and followed. The mystery of the Nazi artifact and the fate of the researchers continue to haunt the imagination of those who hear this story, reminding everyone that some secrets should remain buried forever. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like to support us. And more importantly, if you have a supernatural experience, don't keep it to yourself. Write your story in the comments below. Share your encounter with the inexplicable, feed the collective curiosity, and who knows, maybe together we can unravel these mysteries that hang like a fog between the world of the living and the dead. Remember, the unknown is always lurking, just a tale away. And now, with night falling, who knows what shadows may emerge from the darkness to whisper yet another true story of terror.